Jana Balaba Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Jaya Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Kunja Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Gauranga, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Nityananda. Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo bolo, louder. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bolo, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Go Premanandi, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gauranitai ki jai, Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai, Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glorious to the assembled devotees. All glorious to Sri Guru and Gauranga, glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Name. Namaste Saraswate Devi, Gauravani Vicharini, Nirvasesha Sunyavari, Pastya Chadesha Tarni. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurandalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Papitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Spadikam Vanchakalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyescha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Need the computer. Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody. Thank you for your association this evening. We especially like to welcome our dear friend, well-wisher, wonderful devotee, His Holiness Bhakti Bhagavat Maharaj. Haribo! Come on, louder. Hands up. Haribo! What happened? You haven't had your lunch yet. Louder. Haribo! That's better. Thank you for coming, Maharaj. He's going to be spending many weeks with you here in Malaysia. You're going to be blessed this year. Take full advantage. And if you've been with us on this last, well, not the last three, but during the previous 3 sessions on this subject, you may have noticed the absolute importance of sadhu sangha, hasn't it? We've been discussing Dhruva Maharaj's a little bit of his pastimes, because we started off by hearing from the Chaitanya Mangala and how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was trying to appease his mother for his decision to take sannyas. So it's one of his main presentations to his mother was the story of Dhruva Maharaj, which, as you may know, later on became one of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's most popular subject matters of discussion of Shastra, his Bhagavad Gita with his devotees. This morning we read Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, and that was the other one. It's kind of ironic, on the same time we're discussing both Lord Chaitanya's most prominent subjects in discussing. So we mentioned the other day, last night actually, that we would run over some of the points we've covered, a few, and maybe you would like to put forward. The pastimes which we hear from the Bhagavatam are in themselves very purifying, no doubt. And if we can remember those pastimes, that's practically perfect. Our consciousness could be occupied in remembering Krishna and his devotees. But at the same time, you know, we have a life to lead in this world. Families, jobs, social life, and so on. How to, let's say, balance with the spiritual practices and so on. So we tried a little bit to extract a few, maybe not so many practical as we could, a few, but various lessons which we can all take advantage of. The science of devotional service is not just a kind of, what do we say, it's not just, you know, a history or a religion or not even a philosophy. It is actually our real nature, the real nature of the soul, to realize our real nature. So, as we discussed at little length last night, the transformation between, we could say, Atmendriya and Krishnendriya, seeing ourselves in the center and living our lives with Krishna in the center, no matter what we're doing, family member, working, studying, single, man, woman, how to put Krishna in the center of our lives. And as we discussed, or have heard, how Dhruva Maharaj, born of course of a Kshatriya family with Kshatriya blood, normally they follow the Varna ashram system in those times especially, but he was determined to go beyond that, we could say. Normally a child would not leave for the forest at the age of 5. They would, if he's a Kshatriya, at the age of 50. It was a standard practice practically amongst Kshatriyas, at least those who were spiritually inclined, who were following the principle of Varnashram. They would leave home, Panchaswadram Vanam Vrajet, at the age of 50, but not the age of 5. For a higher purpose, someday, Varshabhutapani, between now and here, these verses are there in the Bhagavatam, that sometimes even Lord Chaitanya, he took sannyas at the age of 23, 24. Normally he wouldn't do that. And he was a young wife, no children. Mother without a father had passed away. But for a higher cause, of course, we can't imitate that. Usually we may try to imitate that on the basis of our failure or our frustrations or our selfish ambitions. But in terms of, what is the will of the Lord, that's another thing. So Dhruva Maharaj's pastimes are very instructive in many ways. We don't imitate them, but we can learn from the lessons. And it's the lessons that we learn, if we can apply them, they're there for our transformation. They're not just there for that's his problem. That's Indra. Indra, he's always getting up to trouble, isn't he? What a character. But this is for us to learn from. It's not like, Indra, who do we think we are? He's a great personality. Sakama Bhakta, no doubt. And occasionally we hear, maybe not even in this millennium, we don't even know what millennium it's in sometimes, that he may perform. And it may not even be the same person necessarily. Indra is a post. It's not like an eternal position. It's a post which different people occupy. Just like the president of Malaysia is not the same person forevermore. They may want to be like that, but that's not how it is. It changes. It's a post. Indra, Brahma, they're all posts. Of course, there's a personality there, and he's got his own personality, but it's not necessarily the same person when you say Indra. But whatever it is, he's teaching us lessons, and sometimes how not to do it, not just how to do things. We have to learn also sometimes how not to do things, or what the result of doing it, let's say, the wrong way. What is the result of that? Of going against Dharma, or going against your responsibility, or acting according to envy, or pride, or lust, or whatever it is. What the result is. Even Bhagavad Gita is like that, isn't it? Arjuna is a fully self-realized soul, eternal associate of the Lord, but it looks like he's an illusion. They play roles for the Lord to teach, either directly through them, or directly through himself, or whatever, somewhere or another, but to teach us. Just like Prabhupada says, the mother teaches her daughter-in-law through her own daughter. Like that. So these Bhagavatam pastimes are to teach us a lesson. That's you could say, the practical aspect, whatever it may be. So let's go back to where we started, and let's pick up from 5, 6, 7 days ago. I don't know, we were away for 4 days. So. And we started off with this verse, at least in the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. Jaya Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. And this is not quoted in the Bhagavatam. This is actually to be found in the Hari Bhakti Sudadaya, which is part of the Naradiya Purana, apparently. Ancient scripture. And it's describing the Supreme Lord's pastimes, as many commentaries are, many Puranas are. And there's a bit large section there dealing with Dhruva Maharaj's pastimes. And so this verse, which is very famous, Stanamilasi tapasi stitoham tam praptavandeva munindraguyam kacham vichinvanapi devyaratnam swamin kitartosmi varangnayache. You may have heard that. You would have heard it if you were here on the first day. When he was being blessed, this is when Dhruva Maharaj was being blessed by the personality of Godhead. After he performed his austerities, what were his austerities? Who remembers? Last night we discussed at length penance, kind of similar to austerity, tapa, penance, austerity. What was his penance? What was his austerity? Who remembers? Here on the first night you may have heard a bit. We didn't discuss it much. Anyone remember, what did Dhruva Maharaj do? They're very shy, by the way, in Malaysia. Even if they know, they're scared of saying they do in case they get it wrong, and then they look, you know how it is, then they look a right fool in front of everybody else. Isn't it? You must get that all the time. But they are very shy. What was Dhruva Maharaj's austerity? That's just saying another word for the same thing. What was his austerity? Pardon?
Chanting is 12 syllable.
What they say?
Chanting 12 syllables mantra.
Chanting?
Chanting mantra, 12 syllable mantra.
Chanting a mantra, okay. What mantra? Okay, 12 syllable mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He received this mantra from who? Narada Muni. So the real essence of the austerity, of the penance, is not so much what you do. There are many people performing intense austerities in this world. There are yogis up in the Himalayas probably doing pretty intense austerities. I've not seen, but I've heard. I maybe see yogis, but I don't know what they're doing. But we hear that they're doing intensive austerities. And the materialist people, I mean, we had one Prime Minister of England. She wouldn't sleep more than 2 hours a day. 2 hours a day. She was so into what she was doing. She was known as the Iron Lady. She was so fixed. She didn't have a time to do anything but what she was doing. She was so austere in that sense. No time for sense gratification as we know it, because that is sense gratification because it's for her own thing. But very austere, you could say. Hardly eating, hardly sleeping. But is that really what it means by penance? Is that how Krishna, if you listened last night, Krishna says, I'm hardly satisfied by the yogis and ascetics. That doesn't satisfy me. What is the real penance? The penance which Krishna himself says is non-different than him. If you see it, we read it yesterday, 2nd canto. Penance is my heart. I am present where there is. What is that penance that Dhruva Maharaj undertook? Now don't say standing on his leg, for so long, only breathing once every 3 days or something. There are yogis who do that, but that doesn't mean that's not really the penance that Krishna is talking about. That's still in the modes of nature. Krishna's talking of penance beyond that, isn't he? So what is special about Dhruva Maharaj's chanting of the mantra, or his whatever he did, giving up eating, giving up everything practically, even breathing, and so much he gave up breathing that the whole universal flow of air got jammed. And the demigods were starting to choke. And then they appealed to the Lord to go to him, and the Lord went to him and stopped his austerity, if you want to call it that. So what makes it this penance which is non-different than the Lord? It's not just an activity. You can't speculate or manufacture devotional service. I've already given the answer. Pardon? Yeah, we discussed one verse last night, which is the Paribhasya Sutra. It means the essential verse, which captures the whole substance of the text from the Nectar of Devotion. Who remembers that verse? Pardon? That's the second part of it. What's the first part? Pardon, dear? Anyabilasita shunyam jnana kamajanavattam anukulyena krishnanu shilam. And the main line we discussed was anukulyena shilam, anukulyena krishna anushilam. And what is that? That's cultivating devotional service, favorable devotional service, cultivation for the pleasure. Devotional service literally means for the pleasure of Krishna. That's what makes it a penance. When we act for the pleasure of Krishna. And how do we find out what pleases Krishna? It's quite common sense. We ask somebody who knows. So the actual science of devotion is received in this way through the parampara, through the Tatvidi Pranipatina Pariprashnena Sevya. So he was fortunate, he says himself, Providence acting my fortune, that I had the good opportunity to associate with Narada Muni and saintly persons. And when he followed their instructions, and when after some time Lord Krishnagarbha, Lord Vishnu, appeared before him, his meditation broke, and there was the Lord of his heart stood right in front of him. And when he saw the Lord, He approached the Lord, as this verse says. Dhruva Maharaj said, "Oh my Lord, because I was seeking an opulent material position, I was performing severe types of penance and austerity. Now I have gotten you, who are very difficult for the great demigods, saintly persons and kings to attain. I was searching after a piece of glass, but instead I have found a most valuable jewel. Therefore, I am so satisfied, I do not wish to ask any benediction from you." Now this verse is found in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, I believe, in the Madhya Lila. He taught this, of how, now one of the most important lessons, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, now you may not have been here when we discussed this a few days ago, but Prabhupada says this is the most important lesson to be imbibed in the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj. Let me see where it is now. Who can remember what was that? Let's see. Anyone know? Prabhupada said that this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, the most important lesson to learn is no matter who you are, what your condition is, whether you're full of material desires or not, we should approach the Lord and follow the instructions of the Lord's devotees and won't become purified. Everyone is eligible. No one is excluded from this opportunity to worship the Lord. We just have to find worship of the Lord means, basically speaking, transforming our intentions away from satisfying me, from using the Lord to satisfy my senses, but rather using this human form of life to satisfy Krishna's senses. Transformation. It's not just a visual transformation, it's a literal transformation which manifests in our every activity. Whether we're raising a family, working in an office, trying to see how this can be done for the pleasure of Krishna. That's a big topic in itself, which is another time. I like the commentary, the translation also in the Hari Bhakti Sudhadaya. It's kind of a little flowery, but I'll read some of it. In the Hari Bhakti Sudhadaya, the verse is translated like this: "By the unreserved grace of the holy ones, I have been given the rarest chance to have the gracious vision of your transcendental, illustrious, blissful divinity, which rarely can be had even by the seers and sages." By pleasing Narada Muni, he got this opportunity by his grace. I'm just reading a bit of it. Thus, what a fool I was. I was merely searching for a piece of glass, but due to the providence that acted upon my fortune, I now could find inexhaustible mine of gems. Not just a valuable jewel, but a mine of gems. I do not crave for anything else. O Lord of transcendence, the beauty of your lotus feet are now the supreme object of my attraction. Therefore, I ever pray that I should never forget them. My cups are full. What does that mean? My cups are full. What does that? This is a secret of devotional service also. What does it mean, my cups are full? My cup is not full, it's almost empty. Does it mean that? You have a lot of cups, they're all full of water, milk, or what? No, what does it mean? My cups are full. I think it's just a simplistic translation. But we hear this. My cup, in the Bible we see, my cup overfloweth. You've heard that statement? My cup overfloweth. What does that mean? You have to think about these things. They're important points. They're not spoken direct, but they're very nice to remember because it helps us to, apply the principle in our lives. If your cup is overflowing, can you get anything else in it? No. So what it means, my cups are full, is, in other words, he's completely satisfied. There's no need for any other object or any other way of becoming satisfied. You're completely satisfied, Yavan art udapani sabatak samsatodike. One who knows this, one who knows the Supreme Lord, is a reservoir of all pleasure. If you connect with him, all your desires are satisfied. He's the reservoir. In this material world, you only get a little drop. And that little drop ultimately comes from the reservoir. So if we're connected to the reservoir, you've got everything you need. You don't need to go anywhere else. And whatever the hell happens in your life, it doesn't really matter. You're satisfied because inside your heart, you're completely satisfied. You're getting that param drishvanavata taste. You're getting the actual higher taste. That's how we lose the attraction for all these temporary objects of pleasure in this world. Whether it's driving a fast car or whatever you do to get you a pleasure, listening to some, whatever, mundane sounds, sensual activities, sex life, whatever it is, there'd be no need for it. Because why do you do those things is to satisfy your heart, to try to satisfy the heart, the soul, through the consciousness, through the mind, and so on. So when you're satisfied, completely satisfied, nothing can disturb one. Dhruva was performing these great austerities, and Prahlad, we're hearing this morning how he was tortured by his father, practically speaking. But he was undisturbed, because he was completely attached, he was completely absorbed in the lotus feet of the Lord. He's abhaya, lotus feet of the Lord. He becomes fearless, completely fearless. Should I be such a fool that when I possess a wish-yielding tree, I should beg for empty husk? You've got a wish-fulfilling tree. What do you need? You've got everything you need. Krishna's lotus feet are a wish-fulfilling, you could say a tree, not exactly a tree, but they're the same principle. All one's desires are fulfilled. We find in the third canto, I think it's third canto of Bhagavatam, maybe in Lokapila's teachings or not, I think it is, how he describes how the lotus feet of the Lord are so auspicious, and how Lord Shiva becomes even more auspicious by taking the water that has touched the lotus feet of the Lord on his head. You all know this. How the Ganga enters through the Lord's lotus feet, enters into this universe. Lord Shiva takes it on his hairs and is disseminated throughout the universe. He becomes even more auspicious. More auspicious. And he says, because meditation on the Lord's lotus feet acts just like the thunderbolt of Indra. Indra has his thunderbolt. He can smash mountains to pieces with his thunderbolt. Huge mountains. It says, in a similar way, if we meditate upon the lotus feet of the Lord, the mountain of sin within our hearts will be smashed to pieces. Smashed to pieces. Therefore, the yogi should meditate on those lotus feet for a long time. So for a devotee, we may have a slightly different process, but it's the same principle. Srila Prabhupada describes somewhere that actually the lotus feet of the Lord are present today as the Sankirtan movement. This is how they are present, meditating on the holy name, chanting the holy name. It smashes the mountain of sin to pieces in our heart. And sin is not as simplistic, you could say, as we think it is. It literally means anything done for our own bodily or self-intention. It's not just an activity which is called a sin. Identifying with the body itself is considered the greatest sin. The greatest sin, because all other sins come from it in this world. So Dhruva Maharaj, he approached the Lord with mature desires, didn't he? What did he want? Who remembers? Huh? He wanted more than his father's kingdom. He wanted a kingdom greater than his father, greater than his grandfather, greater than his great-grandfather. Didn't go there, we're not going to. He got what he wanted also. But he got much more. He got the opportunity of the lotus feet of the Lord. And he realized all this is meaningless in comparison. So some of the lessons, here we go. His mother said, and I'm not expecting you to remember this necessarily, but his mother said to him, "My dear son, do not wish for anything inauspicious for others." Because he was angry. He was envious of his brother, Uttama. He was envious. And he was angry against his stepmother. She said, don't be envious. Don't desire anything inauspicious for others. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said we should wish only the best good fortune for our worst enemy. Not easy, huh? Anyone who inflicts pains upon others suffers himself from that pain. Of course, there's laws of dharma in society and so on. That's another thing. But if for our own envious intention or selfish intention, you know, we think ill of others, or we try to inflict harm to others, we're the one who's going to suffer. Think about it. And actually it was his mother, his stepmother, Suruchi, who told him, you know, obviously you've not worshipped Lord Narayan properly. If you worship Lord Narayan nicely, you may be fortunate to take birth in my womb. But she advised him to worship Lord Narayan. Said, you are an unfortunate boy because you're not born of me. You should worship Lord Narayan, and maybe you'll become fortunate. And you may take birth in my womb. She was so self-centered. But she was right, and Suniti told him, your stepmother is correct. What she said is correct. That's where it started. So she also acted like a Siksha guru to Dhruva Maharaj. Now here's a very important point. To become successful in any attempt, one not only has to undergo severe penances and austerities, which we just mentioned, but also one must be dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Don't think that just performing austerities, even chanting 16 rounds or more, or getting up early in the morning, following all these nice rules and regulations, restricting ourselves from activities which are unfavorable, displeasing to Krishna and so on. That's okay, but that's not enough. We have to become dependent on the mercy of the Lord. As Krishna explains to Arjuna in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? Perform your duty, but always depend upon me. Don't just do your duty. We don't just do our sadhana. We have to be a little Krishna conscious too. Remember Krishna, he knows what's going on. You don't go back to Godhead just by mechanics. There's got to be this feeling in the heart, depending on the Lord. I always like to say, you know, this song which Prabhupada, well, this poem, not even a poem, it is a poem, yeah. When he first arrived in Boston, he compiled one poem. Do you remember what it's called? In Boston, 1965, September 18th. What was the name of the poem? First thing he wrote when he arrived in Boston on the boat, on board the Jaladuta Commonwealth Pier, Boston, Massachusetts, USA, September the 18th, 1965. That's how it ends. What was the poem? What's the title? Who remembers? Come on. Gosh. Huh? What are they saying?
Make me dance. Make me dance.
Make me dance. Want me to make you dance? You'll have a hard time if you want me to make you dance. What? Make me dance. Okay, that's part of it. Yeah, that's one of the stanzas in the poem, you could say. But what's the poem called? Pardon? Markine, well done. Markine Bhagavat Dharma. And what does that mean? Excuse me, what? What'd she say?
Why you brought me here?
Why you brought me here? I didn't bring you here. You paid for your own ticket. I came to collect. They're building out the temple in Manila. She came here to collect some money. I know why she came here. They're trying to build a little temple there, you know, for the beautiful deities of Radha Madhava. If anyone wants to give a few $1 million, she's wet. You can give it to her if you want. What does it mean? Markine Bhagavat Dharma. Don't speculate, no. Bhagavat Dharma, you must know what that means. I'd love to know if you don't know what Bhagavat Dharma means. What is Bhagavat Dharma? This is our eternal occupation. What is our eternal occupation? What is it? Are you eternally a car mechanic or an engineer or an IT specialist or a doctor? Is that your eternal occupation? What is our eternal occupation? Excuse me, what? Service too? Did you say service? Did somebody said service? Did you say service? Service to who? Who? To the Lord. Service to Krishna. Jive Srupai Nichara Krishna Das. It's their eternal constitution to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is that? That means to be Krishna conscious. Devotional service. Service to the Lord means devotional service. Is teaching devotional service, Markine Bhagavat Dharma, in America. Markine Bhagavat Dharma. Now we're busily looking for a constitution for Iskcon. I think you're part of that, are you? Are you part of that? No, they didn't grab you for that one. They were busy. But to me, it is a simple constitution. It's entirely contained within Markine Bhagavat Dharma. It's not a question of do this, do that, do this, do that, objectives, blah, blah, blah. That's okay. That's the structure. But the structure has, unless there's a spirit, the right spirit inside the structure, what's the point? What's the use of a nice house, there's, a bad atmosphere or the wrong atmosphere there? What's the use of a body, a human body, if we don't use it properly? You may have a very nice structure, but the spirit, we have a saying in English, it's not the letter of the law that counts, but the spirit of the law. The spirit. What's the purpose behind it? Sometimes we got so dependent on structures and rules and regulations. They're important. We have to abide by them when they're relevant. Let's read a little something. I'm going to jump over one or two things here. I'm going to read something. This is Prabhupada. This is from the same pastime. Prabhupada writes, what is convenient in India may not be convenient in the Western countries. This is a prelude. Those who are not actually in the line of acharyas or who personally have no knowledge of how to act in the role of acharya unnecessarily criticize the activities of the Iskcon movement in countries outside of India. The fact is that such critics cannot do anything personally to spread Krishna consciousness. If someone does go and preach, taking all risks and allowing all considerations for time and place, it might be that there are changes in the manner of worship, but that is not at all faulty according to Shastra. Srimad Viraragava Acharya, an Acharya in a disciplic succession of Ramanuja Sampradaya, has remarked in his commentary that chandalas, or conditioned souls who are born in lower than Shudra families, can also be initiated according to circumstance. The formalities may be slightly changed here and there to make them Vaishnavas. Anybody can become a Vaishnava. The point being is that what it takes to bring the essence, to bring us to the point of devotional service, to bring us to the point of remembering Krishna. It's not just a matter of following, like blindly, like a religious dogma or something. We always have to keep the conscious awareness of what the purpose is behind it, what the objective of what we do is, not just what we do. The beginning, that may be the focus, but we also have to be aware of what the purpose behind what's the purpose behind all the rules and regulations? What is it? What's the purpose behind all these systems, structures, institutions, everything? What's the purpose? It's not to compete with others, that's for sure. Though some people think it is. It's not to get followers as such. It's not to become famous. It's not to be comfortable. It's not to get a position, is it? What is it? What's the purpose of Iskcon? What's the purpose? Build temples? No. What's his purpose? What's his purpose? Maybe I'm too demanding here. Too difficult. Purpose is to facilitate the awakening of Krishna consciousness in people's hearts. Prabhupada says clearly, if that's not happening, we're doing something wrong. You have to see what that is. Something's not right. We should be developing our consciousness of Krishna. That's what the temple's for. The temple is for that sole reason, to help us remember Krishna. Matavyasatam Vishnu, Vishmatavindajatati. All the rules and regulations we follow are for this principle of remembering Krishna. The purpose of our movement is to remember Krishna, to bring memory of Krishna to people's lives. Not just to control, not just to put down, but to awaken our love for Krishna. That's the essence. And to see the mood which is mentioned here in this verse is not just that we have to perform austerities or follow the principles and rules and regulations. That's there. Of course we should do that. But it's the actual dependence upon the Lord. And you'll find in this poem, Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma, essentially speaking, the whole poem is based on that. And this is the first thing Prabhupada wrote when he arrived in the Western world. The foundation by which this movement can actually grow by being completely focused on the fact that we are nothing but an instrument for the will of the Lord. For His will, not ours, His will to enact the spreading of Krishna consciousness. And we won't have time, but you should read the translation at least to this poem, Markandeya Bhagavat Dharma. We would sing it if we had time, we don't. But it's the most profound writing of all, practically, because it gives the foundation. Without a foundation, the building will not stand. We will fight over the building and it will collapse. The foundation has to be as strong as rock, founded in total dependence on the Lord. Thick and thin, we're not on that level. But we can get that principle, that understanding of how whatever we decide to do, it must be based on the right foundation. The mood of Srila Prabhupada. As Tyaga said, make me dance, make me dance. Whereas Indravali said, why have you brought me here? I do not know. To this terrible place, but you must have some purpose for bringing me here. And Krishna, Prabhupada goes on. Please, I'm most unqualified, wretched. I have no devotion, I have no knowledge. Please, if you want to make me dance, make me dance, make me dance as you wish. The poem goes like this. Total dependence on the Lord. Not that, oh, I'm very clever, I can work it out, I can analyze it, I can do this, I can do that. But depending on the Lord. Of course, we utilize what God's given us as best we can, but in the spirit of depending on the Lord. We'll read a little bit more. This is something related to that. I wanted to share this because it's a very interesting statement. This is by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's kind of related to this. He says there are two types of religious practitioners. Have you heard this, Maris? You've probably heard this before. There are two types of religious practitioners. Now, this doesn't strictly refer to us, but we've got to be careful that we don't also fall into this category. You know, like many movements start off with a very sincere and pure intent. They become over-institutionalized, like any other religion, it becomes rather dogmatic. So you have to be careful of that. So he says there are two types. The first one he describes are Bharavahis. Bharavahis. Never heard this term before. I was reading it the other day. Bharavahis, which means the external practitioner. We can apply this in our lives too. We're just, depending on something, some structure, some corporate arrangement, whatever it is. Bharavahis are those religious who are completely trapped in the externals. They are more into the rituals, the dress, the dogma, etc. This is where a lot of fanatics are created. Often such worshippers have trouble not only with other practitioners of other religions, but even with those in their own faith who do things differently from them. So that's the Bharavahis, briefly. And then he describes the words you probably have heard before, because this is mentioned quite a few times, the Saragrahis, Saragrahi Vaishnav. The Saragrahis are the inner practitioner. They may be behaving externally as if they're the same as the Bharavahis, but they're not. They're internal, their intentions are internal. These practitioners are focused on the essence of religion and are not distracted by rituals, dress, dogma, details, etc. These worshippers are castes to their religion, because the religious, the Bharavahis consider them like, some caste fanatics or something, something odd. They don't like them, but because they, like you go to some countries where they so say practice a religion, there's one very close to here, where they've instituted things like eating the cow is very pious because you become purified. So the devotees are preaching otherwise, so they consider them fanatics against their religion. But they're actually helping people to actually understand the purpose of the religion, but because they're disturbing them in their position of whatever it may be, as a respected position. Therefore, they consider them like, they try to make them seem like they're caste. And they are hungry. But actually the devotees are not sectarian. They're the only broad-minded ones, because they're trying to open everyone's consciousness to the unlimited realm, the realm of reality, the spiritual realm, not this limited material realm where everyone is living in a cult mentality. We're right, you're wrong. This is a cult mentality based upon false premises, dogmatic. The devotees, they're supposed to rise above all of that. They're supposed to be on a different plane of consciousness. You read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings, and many times you read in Jaiva Dharma or any of these literatures, one will see just how broad-minded Bhaktivinoda is, seeing everything from Uttama Bhagavat stage, but bringing it down, you could say, to the practical level of our lives, so we can apply that process which will help us to rise up and not just get stuck in some kind of blocked dogmatic process. The Sahagrahis are hungry to experience an even richer inner life. We need to follow the Srila Prabhupada. We need to follow these devotees. These spiritualists know that one can follow. This spiritualist knows that one can follow rules and teachings superficially, although one can go deeper to understand the essence. You can follow superficially and be proud of it. I've chanted so many rounds. How many have you done? I distributed so many books. How many have you done? You know, we can be on a little bit of an ego platform there also. All that one can go deeper, understand the essence. They also realize that there is mukhya, or primary rules, or as well as gona, secondary rules. Same thing in chanting the holy names. There are mukhya names and gona names. Mukhya names are the personal names of God. The gona names are like, you know, God, Super Soul, Creator, Paramatma, you know, like that. Parameshwar, Brahman. It's just some little. Bharavahi is usually confused secondary with primary. They think the secondary ones are the primary ones. And then it goes on. It says a lot more. We'll leave it at that. A few more points which we mentioned the other day. Why did Narada Muni recommend to Dhruva Maharaj? He didn't recommend to go into the forest and perform austerities at first. What did he recommend? Pardon? Go back home. You're a young boy, eh? Your parents are now lamenting bitterly. Your father, he's willing to give you the kingdom. Don't worry, in due course of time, Providence will give you all you want. Just go back home. You're a young boy. You're a Kshatriya. You shouldn't be here at this age. Why did he do that? Why did he recommend that? Huh? Pardon? Testing? He was testing him. And that was, I think, second session we discussed this primarily. How the Lord will test us, isn't it? All of us get tested every moment, in one sense. So what was his test? What was the test? How determined was Dhruva? In fact, the very word Dhruva means one who has fixed resolve or determination. Name, Dhruva. How Dhruva was he? How determined was he to attain his goal? So this lesson of determination is a significant lesson, which is absolutely required to be. The word determine in English, isn't it? Or let's take the word determination. Determination is two parts, isn't it? Or determine. Determinate means what? Terminate. What's it mean? Terminate. End. Bring it to an end. So determinate, don't bring it to an end. Carry on. There may be many tests on the path. Many doubts may come. Many challenges may come. We're discussing today with some of the devotees this very principle. They're in a difficult situation because of family situation being what it was. And it's actually a test from Krishna. It can strengthen our determination. It can strengthen our dependence on the Lord, because, as we've mentioned, we can mention here, also one of the significant points mentioned was when all else fails, only the Lord can help us, and you have to take shelter. So sometimes Krishna takes things away. He puts us in situations we have no choice, but we have no one else to turn to. It's a blessing when we're in that situation, because we have no one else to turn to. We can't depend on anything else. We have to turn to Krishna. When you're in a helpless situation, some of you have been through different situations of ill health. You're kind of lost. You have no choice. You take shelter of Krishna. No one else can save us. Or you're in a very difficult situation of whatever it may be, family, economics, whatever it is, something or another. He takes shelter of Krishna. So one's a devotee. This is the lesson Prabhupada says we should learn here. This is the process, Prabhupada says here, of accepting a disciple to see how determined he is to prosecute devotional service. The great sage Narada has come to Dhruva under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just to initiate him. That means to give him instructions. It doesn't mean some ceremony. That's another sign of the what is called Bharavahis. They think that the ceremonies and the rituals, that's it, you know. The ceremony is just to solidify your commitment to following the instructions. It isn't the real initiation, it's our dedication to the instruction of the spiritual master. That's the real initiation. When they become our life and soul. Isn't it? So he tests the disciple. The great sage Narada has come to Dhruva under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead just to initiate him, yet he is testing Dhruva's determination to execute the process. It is a fact, however, that for a sincere person, devotional service is very easy, but for one who is not determined and sincere, the process is very difficult. So determination is a very important principle. You know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in Bhakti Loki, he said that by hearing about these great devotees like Narada Muni, Srila Prabhupada, Haridas Thakur, Rupa Goswami, who are these great devotees who show by example, by hearing about them, one can develop great determination. You see the determination of Srila Prabhupada, isn't it? Against all odds, practically, alone, single-handedly. No, didn't have any support from any external form whatsoever, practically, did he? He had no money, he had no institution, he had no manpower, no support, no recognition. He wasn't known by anyone, practically. He had some Bhagavatam sets. That's transcendental. But he had no external support. No buildings, he had nowhere to stay. Nothing. Hardly, even the language was a challenge. But Prabhupada's determination to fulfill the order of this spiritual master. It's the duty of the spiritual master to test the disciple to see how seriously he desires to execute devotional service. Then he may be initiated. That's the principle. You may get an initiation in a fire yoga, but it doesn't mean that one's, in one sense, truly initiated unless one has actually accepted the spiritual master's instructions as one's life and soul. Otherwise we're still connected in some ways, and the spiritual master would continue maybe to, let's say, encourage, guide, whatever. But the real disciple is one who's completely surrendered to the spiritual master and knows what pleases the spiritual master, doesn't necessarily have to keep asking. And then the point which we heard just now. It is not a fact, however, that those who have mature desires are prohibited from worshipping the Supreme Lord. Now we're going the other way, all accommodating. Some or another we have to imbibe the instructions of the pure devotee of the Lord and apply them in our lives somewhere along the line. They're not prohibited from worshipping the Lord. Everyone can worship the Lord. This is the essential instruction from the life of Dhruva, that everyone can worship the Lord. Everyone. Through this narration, it will become clear, very clear, Prabhupada said, that no one is barred from worshipping the Lord, even if one has many material desires. We all come with material desires. We try to take direction how to engage those desires, how to purify ourselves of being attached to those desires, and gradually, by following the order of the spiritual master, accepting his guidance, how we can do that, then one can gradually advance in spiritual life. The statements of Dhruva Maharaj indicate that unless a child is trained according to his tendency, there is no possibility of his developing his particular spirit. This is another, it's not direct, you could say, in one sense. Yes, in one sense, he is a Kshatriya. His determination is one of the qualities of a Kshatriya. but to see. It is the duty of the spiritual master or teacher to observe the psychological movement of a particular boy and thus train him in a particular occupational duty. That's how it would work. It's not just what you feel like necessarily or what's available, but very important to see what the characteristics of a child are and to try to enhance or encourage those qualities in the proper way, in a Krishna conscious way. The Gaivi Varnashram. Well, time is expiring, has expired. I'll just read the last one. The significance of this particular verse is that Dhruva Maharaj acted exactly according to the advice of his spiritual master, the great sage Narad. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also advises that if we want to be successful in our attempt to go back to Godhead, we must very seriously act according to the instruction of the spiritual master. That is the way of perfection. There need be no anxiety over attaining perfection, because if one follows the instruction given by the spiritual master, he is sure to attain perfection. Our only concern should be how to execute the order of the spiritual master. A spiritual master is expert in giving special instructions to each of his disciples, and if the disciple executes the order of the spiritual master, that is the way of his perfection. This is the basis of Dhruva's success, is that he followed the order of Narada Muni, and he got everything he desired. All of his desires were fulfilled. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions? Any questions? Some questions? Don't say Shyam Sundari again. He's full of questions.
And Krishna reminded how to have unshaken love, faith and devotion towards Krishna.
Oh my goodness. How to have unshaken love, faith and devotion to Krishna.
Just like certain part of our life, we will feel like, okay, we are getting certain things, but there are certain times where we will be tested.
Have you ever been in an earthquake? I've been in quite a few earthquakes, here and there. Pretty hard not to be shaken. The material world is like an earthquake. Well, there's one simple answer, and there could be long answers. The very simple answer is to associate with one who has unshaken faith, love, and devotion for the Lord. That's the secret. That's the main, you could say, the main way that we can develop this faith or devotion or spirit of not being shaken. When you're with someone who's fully, even in the material world, if you're so, you know, when you're a kid, many of us will have had that experience. You've got like a big friend who's like, you know, a big guy, and it's like, you know, everyone's scared of them, you know. How do you feel? You feel pretty safe, don't you? Or when you're with your dad when you're a little kid, right? Even though there's a difficult situation, you have faith that your dad is there, he's going to protect me from hellfire and brimstone, right? Isn't it? Where's Kasi? Is he here? There he is. You can probably remember your kids when they were small, right? This is his daughter. So you feel confidence, don't you, when you're with your dad or your mum? Your mum's here? Where are you? There she is. Haribol. So, because you're with somebody who's strong. So none of us would be here if that wasn't the case, would we? You know, Krishna consciousness is a bit of a challenge to the world in general, in many ways. But we're with devotees who have confidence, especially Prabhupada. So I suggest you read You read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, for starters. Try to hear about those who do have it. See their example. See the example of Haridas Thakur. Even Jesus Christ in the Christian church, that's where they get their strength from. Otherwise they've got nothing. It's not much of a philosophy. But they have faith in Jesus, because he showed some example, which is, the great example, you could say, in Haridas. But Srila Prabhupada has given us a whole philosophy, and if you study the books, I know that most of you here today are not studying enough, and there's reasons for that. Obviously you say, I'm so busy, I've got no time, I've got my family, I've got my job, I'm studying at the same time. And, many people like that these days. They work, both husband and wife, and one of them's doing a degree as well. And the other one's got 2 jobs. They got 2 kids. Isn't it? Often like this. They say they got no time, which, maybe, but we have to see what is the real priority of our life. What do we really want in life? Do you really want that? Is that what you want? Is that really going to satisfy your heart? Are you going to abandon the opportunity to go back to Godhead for that? Oh. Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj said, of course we hear different things, and different disciples had different instructions from him. It's not that everyone got 64 rounds to chant. Usually we hear Bhakti Siddhanta Maharaj told his disciples, or prospective disciples, you have to chant 64 rounds. Some of them said, no, he didn't say that to everyone. We read that in the Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhav, that he, some of the devotees said he only said 4 rounds. Chant as much as you can, he said to one. But specifically, it was more for the Grihastas he gave the 64 rounds. For the Grihastas, the married people who are working, at least the husband's working, supposed to be. Now the wife is working, the husband stays home. But in the West, this is very common now. So he said, one devotee said, Guru Maharaj, Gurudev, I have no time to finish 64 rounds. He said, I know how much time you have. Gossip. So much gossip. Facebook, footbook, all kinds of books. But not Krishna book. Every other book you can think of. WhatsApp, this thing, that thing. Messaging back a load of rubbish to each other. Looking at nonsense. Looking at negativity. Looking at devotees who have no lack of faith or critical nature, listening to them. This destroys your devotion. It doesn't enhance it. It just, let's say, fans our tendency for this type of stuff. But it puts out the fire of devotion. And they take the advantage to associate properly, not waste time. I'm not saying you are wasting time, but I'm sure we can. I remember Dhanavir Goswami, Prabhupada disciple, when he was a new boy, new Bhakta, Vishnu Jan Swami was the temple commander in LA. And so Dhanavir approached him and said, Maharaj, can you give me some time for reading? He said, no. No. You just do your service. We have at least 8 to 10 hours service a day, as well as 7 hours sadhana every day. 4 hours in the morning, 3 hours at night, 2.5 hours at night, almost 3, and at least 4.5 in the morning. So about 7 hours, 8 hours sadhana every single devotee in the temple had. You don't have that. You're working people living outside. Even those in the temple don't have that. Some of them have none. They just sleep and stay in the temple. They don't come to anything. How do we expect a transformation? We have to do what Krishna wants, isn't it? Not what we want. Think what Krishna wants. Put Krishna in the center. So he said, no, you can't. He said, you find time to read, but you can't reduce your service. And Dhanavir said he ended up finding 2 to 3 hours a day to study Prabhupada's books without reducing 1 second on his service. Just by not wasting time. He's sitting there. When's the prasadam coming? God, dear, what's wrong with these people in this temple sitting around talking about it? You could be reading Prabhupada's books. sitting in the car, waiting for 20 minutes in the traffic, then read Prabhupada's books. If you're not driving, you can't do it if you're driving. If you're a passenger, you can. Read. Take advantage of every moment you can to hear from the pure devotees of the Lord. All one's doubts will be removed if you hear from Prabhupada in his books. In confidence, enthusiasm, you'll become strong. Someone else asked the question last night, if you have not good association, what do we do? We're living in a fortune, and Prabhupada wrote that letter I mentioned last night. You become the good associate. You study my books and you become. You become. But we have to associate. So if you don't have the personal association, at least try to hear from the pure devotee as much as you can. Don't waste time. Don't waste time. That's up to us. That's our choice. That's our penance. This is what it is, a penance. If we don't want to perform penance, it's difficult for the change to take place. We have to make that decision. When you're with devotees who are doing like that, of course it's a lot easier. So as much as possible, associate when saintly people come. Try to associate as much as you can by hearing carefully. Serve them if you can. Everyone's entitled. Just a matter of our choice. Sure, it takes time. It's difficult to shake it off. So somehow or another, try to get Sangha, association, which can help us to move forward positively. Even if you don't have the opportunity to associate with really more advanced devotees particularly, but at least together we can try to help each other to rise up. Have reading groups or conversation groups or japa groups or something or another, online or physically, whatever you can do, but associate. And association means hearing and chanting together in association. It doesn't just mean sitting around having a gossip, having a chat. Anything else?
One last question.
Thank you all very much. We're heading off to India at 4 o'clock in the morning. We're going to get ready. Vrindavan is the 50th anniversary of the installation of Krishna Balaram. And so it's quite a big events going on in Vrindavan throughout the year. Of the installation was on Ram Navami, which is a week or so away. Days were installed there, so it's a big festival. And it's also the 40th anniversary of moving into this temple, by the way. 1985 we moved into this building. So not this exact building, but this property. You remember that Vivek Tiaga? 1985 we moved from Taman Kanakapuram to Taman Yarl. In 1985, Ramcharan Janaki, Bhakti Rajendra Maharaj, Vrindavan Chandra, those were active members of our community, and others. We moved over here. So that's 40 years this year. I don't know what celebrations you're having, I don't know. Maybe you're having something, I don't know. It's the 10th anniversary also this year of the installation of Krishna Kanaya, Radha Krishna Kanaya in Todu. 10th anniversary this year. Yeah. 2015 they were installed, so this is the 10th anniversary. So I mentioned it to them up there. They didn't seem to have much in store for it. Now they may start planning. It's nice to remember these things because it reminds us of Krishna, you know. That's what we're here for. These festivals are really important to help us remember. That's another thing, by the way, back to Vinod Thakur said. You hear this, isn't it? Madhavati Bhakti Janani. If we observe these various festivals, they are like mothers of devotion. Janmashtami is one, but there are many festivals, and this will be another one. Maybe you don't know we don't know the exact date, but it was around about March, April when we moved, if my memory serves me right, into this property. Hare Krishna, thank you all very much. Wish you all the very best in your devotion, wonderful service here to Srila Prabhupada's mission. Please try to work together cooperatively. Spread this Krishna consciousness in our own hearts and share it with others. We can only give what we got. But if we give what we got, then Krishna will give us more. Never mind, someone's got more than us. That's great. If you associate with them, we can get it too. But whatever we got, try to share it with us. Whatever little knowledge or some spirit, whatever it is. Try to share it. Try to live it. And this way we'll get more. Krishna will reciprocate. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanande. Hari Bol.